The Poetic and Prophetic Books. 1. The Book of Job. This has been supposed to be one of the most ancient of all existing writings in any language. It is thought by many to be prior even to a portion of the Pentateuch, but the best recent authorities place it somewhat later. Its author is unknown. The narrative compromises only a small part of the book and is a very simple story, though containing some remarkable incidents. Briefly, it is the history of a man of superior mental endowments, of lofty moral sentiments, and godly life who had also been greatly prospered in his temporal relations. It had been insinuated by the great adversary of human souls, actually, Hashathan is the continual scourge, which isn't quite the same thing as Hasathan, the adversary. That Job's piety was of a mercenary kind, prompted only by the motive that it would give him worldly advantage. It was the sneering intimidation heard sometimes even in our day, that there is no such thing as disinterested goodness, and that every man is virtuous only so far as virtue is likely to pay. Well, hope for good consequences is certainly not ignoble. Wait, that's not the right way to phrase it. It's there's nothing wrong with hoping good from God. To refute this low and unworthy theory seems to have been one of the great objects of the book. Another object was to show that, contrary to the popular notion, then that sometimes, since prevailing worldly prosperity is not always in proportion to moral goodness, nor is adversity any sure indication of wickedness on the part of its victim. Now, being a professional pietist or a professional worshiper, that's a bit different than just hoping for good results of your deeds. It is upon this latter point that Job's three friends differ from him, and the larger part of the book is taken up with its discussion. They insist that he must have been guilty of some wickedness, or these afflictions would not have come upon him. He vindicates himself from this aspersion, and, though sorely perplexed and despondent because of God's dealings with him, asserts his integrity and avows his faith in God to the last extremity. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Still, Job's language at various points seems to imply that he regards God as somehow dealing unjustly with him. Doubtless this is the cry of the human in its pain and anguish and its necessary ignorance of the ways of God. Of the 29 chapters comprising the discussion between Job and his accusing friends, Eliphaz, who is the leading speaker on the adverse side, takes up 4, Bildad 3, and Zophar 2. The other 20 are occupied by Job. Elihu, who appears to have been a younger man than the others, listens with respectful silence till his elders have concluded, and then speaks at length on the subject under discussion. He frankly rebukes Job for so justifying himself as to imply an impeachment of the divine justice, and is at the same time indignant at the three friends that they have failed to answer him. In this discourse, more than in the utterances of the others, there are gleams of a clearer light and tokens of a higher faith an actual, though vague, discernment of the disciplinary nature of temporal afflictions, and a confidence that in some way which could not then be understood, the divine wisdom would so determine things that though which now appear to be evil would result in good to the believing and obedient soul. The 4 chapters which contain the utterances of the voice of God set forth in sublime language the divine greatness and power and wisdom and excellence, and show how little competent man is to understand God's ways or judge concerning his acts. So there's a lot of mystical guidance, both in symbolic character and pedagogical ways. The antiquity of the book, general character of Job, the 2 leading objects of the book, names of the persons represented in it, and the parts taken by them. See the introduction. The story of Job. In what part of the world is it laid? Job's temporal condition, his family, Satan's accusation, and its implied meaning. The first affliction. Did his faith fail, or his piety diminish? What did he say in view of his losses? Chapter 1:21. The second calamity, and how did he receive it? Chapter 2, 7 through 10. For what purpose did Job's friends come to him? How long did they sit with him? And in what manner? 2, 11 through 13. How large a part of the conversation that ensued is taken up by the 3 friends respectively? What cause is assigned by them for Job's affliction? Is their theory of human sorrow a correct one? How does Job defend himself? Is he wholly correct in his view of the situation? What excuse can be made for some of his utterances? And they put once in the introduction, right? The reason for Elihu's long silence. 32:6. What is his feeling in view of the discussion? 32:2 and 3. In what respects are his views better than those of those, and how does he differ from them? Introduction. What do you hold to be the true doctrine when Elihu seems to catch some glimpses? Who is the chief speaker in the last chapters of the book? The nature of the utterances and the teachings implied, the character of the writings in these chapters. What is the nature of the writing of the principal parts of the book, the character of the poetry? Let each student bring in any passages which strike him as remarkable, either for their imagery or sentiment, or could there be something else that would draw the attention? The condition of Job in his last days. Whose part in the controversy did God most condemn? And I think there's some other things we could talk about with that, but we're gonna, Job's a book that might take more than an hour to actually read, but